The table in the corner was a gray, rainy afternoon in Atlanta. The type of day that made everyone walk faster, heads down, shoulders hunched. But inside a small diner on Peachtree Street, the air was warm and buzzing with quiet chatter. And the smell of fresh coffee. The diner wasn't fancy. Red leather booths, chrome accents, and a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. But it had heart, and Jasmine gave it life. She was the only black waitress working the morning shift. She had dreams, big ones, but for now she needed this job. Rent was late, her mom's hospital bills were growing, and her little brother had outgrown his shoes again. Jasmine was known for her smile. It was the kind that made tired truckers feel seen and lonely tourists feel welcome. She knew her regulars by name and what they ordered. But that rainy day, a stranger came in. He walked in quietly, in a simple gray hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. Soaked from the rain, he sat alone at the corner booth near the window. He looked familiar. But Jasmine couldn't place him. She walked over with her notepad. "Coffee?" she asked, already pouring. The man smiled softly. "Yes, thank you." There was something gentle in his eyes, something humble. Jasmine couldn't help but notice. "You new around here?" She asked as she set down the mug. "Just passing through," he said. Needed a place to think. He looked tired. Not physically, but the kind of tired that came from carrying too much for too long. For the next 20 minutes, Jasmine made sure his cup never ran dry. He didn't talk much, but he listened. He watched her help an elderly couple get seated. He watched her kneel down to pick up a spilled crayon for a toddler. He watched her run the floor alone, taking orders, carrying trays, and still smiling. Then the manager walked in. His name was Doug. He didn't like Jasmine. Never had. She didn't know why. Maybe it was because she spoke her mind. Maybe it was because customers liked her more than they liked him. He pulled her aside. "Who's that guy you keep chatting with?" Doug asked, narrowing his eyes. "Just a customer. He hasn't ordered food yet, just coffee." Doug looked over at the man in the corner. He frowned. "You got a whole section to cover, Jasmine. This ain't a social club." "I know. I'm doing my job." "Doesn't look like it." Before she could argue, the man in hoodie stood up and walked toward the counter. "I'd like to pay," he said quietly. Doug stepped forward. "We have a rule. 1 hour minimum if you're just drinking coffee." The man nodded slowly, pulled out his wallet, and handed over a $100 bill. "Keep the change." Doug looked at the bill, then at Jasmine, then at the man. "You come here to throw money around?" "No," the man said gently. "Just needed a place to sit and think." He turned to Jasmine. "Thank you for your kindness." Then he left. Doug exploded. What the hell was that? He was a customer. I treated him like any other. No, you didn't. You gave him special attention. People are waiting at tables and you're busy playing therapist to some drifter. I did my job. No, you're done. Here. Jasmine froze. "What? You're fired?" He said it loud enough for the entire diner to hear. Silence fell. Forks paused midair. A child stared wide-eyed. Jasmine stood there, heart pounding, cheeks burning. "Get your stuff. I want you out." She walked to the back, grabbed her coat, and came out with her head held high. But as soon as the door closed behind her, the tears came. She had just lost everything. That night, she told her mom. Tried to sound strong, but the truth sat heavy in her chest. The next morning, Jasmine woke up early out of habit. Her uniform still hung on the chair. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall, wondering what she was going to do. Then her phone buzzed. It was a number she didn't recognize. She answered. "Hello? Jasmine? This is Maria from the front desk at the Marriott. There's someone here asking to meet you. He says it's important." "Who?" He didn't say. "Just that you helped him yesterday. At the diner." Jasmine's heart skipped. "He's in a private suite, said it's urgent. He asked for you by name." She hung up. Her hands shook as she got dressed. 3 minutes later, she stood in front of the suite door, heart pounding. She knocked. The door opened. and there he was, Dot, but this time not in a hoodie. He wore a crisp shirt, tailored pants, and a presence that filled the room. Dot, he smiled. Hi, Jasmine. I think it's time we properly met. Her mouth dropped open. Oh my god. You're Sundar Pichai. He nodded. And I have a proposal for you. The offer no one expected, just mine, stood in the doorway, frozen. Her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and awe. Sundar Pichai, one of the most powerful and respected tech leaders in the world, was standing just a few feet away, smiling, gently like an old friend. It didn't make sense. Not yesterday. Not now. Not here. For a moment, the room felt silent, though the faint hum of the city buzzed beneath the hotel window. Her fingers trembled at her sides. She suddenly felt, too, aware of her worn-out jeans and faded sneakers. Please, Sundar said, stepping aside, motioning her in. Come sit. Jasmine took a slow step forward. The suite was large, modern, and impossibly clean. A tray of fruit sat untouched on the glass table. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, softening the edges of the room. It didn't feel real. Everything around her looked like a scene from a movie. She sat carefully on the edge of a white couch, hands clasped in her lap. She didn't know what to say. She didn't even know why she was here. I owe you an apology, Sundar began, sitting across from her. Yesterday you showed me something most people overlook. Kindness, patience, presence. You didn't know who I was. You didn't treat me differently. And you didn't ask for anything in return. You reminded me of something important. Jasmine blinked. I was just doing my job. No, he said quietly. You did much more than that. You saw a stranger in the corner and gave him dignity. You weren't just serving coffee. You were offering grace. Jasmine lowered her eyes. The compliment felt too big. Too heavy. I used to work jobs like that, he said. My first years in America were hard. I didn't have much. Some days I just needed a quiet place and someone to see me. Yesterday, that someone was you. He paused. What happened after I left? Jasmine hesitated. My manager. He fired me, said I wasn't doing my job, that I was wasting time. Sundar's face changed. A flicker of disappointment crossed his features, but he stayed calm, composed. I'm sorry. It's fine, she said, trying to sound like it didn't matter, even though her stomach still twisted every time she thought about it. I guess I'll find something else, eventually. Sundar leaned forward. I don't think you should. Have to wait. Jasmine looked up. I run a company that hires some of the most brilliant minds in the world, he continued. But sometimes brilliance isn't just in degrees or resumes. Sometimes it's in the way someone moves through the world, with empathy, with strength, with resilience. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. He opened it slowly and placed a thin document on the table between them. This is a formal offer, he said. A position on a new initiative I'm launching. It's a mentorship and leadership program for underserved women in tech and business. I want you to be part of it. Full-time, paid, trained, mentored by some of the best people in the industry. Jasmine stared at the paper. The words blurred slightly, and she realized her eyes were filling with tears. But why me? Sundar smiled. Because the world needs more people like you. And I think you're capable of far more than that diner allowed. You to be, her voice cracked. I don't have a degree. I've never worked in tech. I don't even know where to begin. You begin here, he said softly, with belief. We'll teach you the rest. Silence filled the room again, but it wasn't the awkward kind. It was warm, full, like something sacred had just passed between them. Jasmine nodded slowly. Then faster. Yes, I want this. I don't know what to say. Say yes and mean it. She smiled, wiped her eyes, and whispered, yes. They shook hands. As she left the hotel room a few minutes later. The sun had broken through the clouds. The city looked different somehow, brighter, softer, as if it, too, believed something extraordinary was beginning. But the story was far from over, because someone else had been watching, someone who didn't want Jasmine to succeed. And the next day, her past would come knocking. With a secret that could ruin everything, asterisk a shadow from the past, Jasmine didn't sleep at night. Not really. She lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding with a mix of excitement and disbelief. She kept checking her phone, scrolling back to the call log as if Sundar's name might disappear if she blinked too long. But it stayed there, clear and solid. Real Dot, she was no longer just a waitress. She had stepped through a door she never knew existed. Her world was shifting beneath her feet, but instead of fear, she felt something new rising inside her, dash possibility, dot by morning. Jasmine had pulled out her old notebook from high school. It was filled with doodles, to-do lists, and dreams she had forgotten. At the very back, in a messy scrawl, she had written, "Someday, I'll matter." She traced the words with her finger, and this time she whispered, "Maybe someday is today." But as she packed her bag for her first orientation meeting, a knock came at the door. It was sharp. Urgent. Her mother, still weak from her recent hospital stay, called from the bedroom. "Jazz, who is it?" "I got it, Mama," she said, walking to the door. When she opened it, the air shifted. Standing there was a man she hadn't seen in years. His name was Darius. Tall, lean, eyes sharp like broken glass. He had the kind of charm that always came with danger. Jasmine had dated him once years ago when she was young and too tired to know the difference between attention and love. It had ended badly. No, worse than badly. It had ended with bruises, shame, and a secret she had buried deep. "Darius," she said, heart freezing. "What are you doing here?" He smiled, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "I heard you were doing well," he said slowly. "Real well. Thought I'd stop by. Congratulate you." Jasmine stepped halfway out the door, blocking his view of the apartment. "You heard wrong. We're fine, but nothing's changed." "Nah," he said, cocking his head. "Word gets around, Jazz. Saw a picture of you with some big shot CEO. What's his name? Sundar. Sunday. Something fancy." Her blood went cold. "You got it wrong." "Don't lie to me," he said, voice lowering. "You know I hate lies." His gaze turned hard, calculating. "Thing is," he continued, "people might be real impressed with your story. Poor waitress gets a miracle, but I wonder how they'd feel if they knew the rest. You need to leave. I will. But first," he leaned in, close enough that she could smell the stale smoke on his breath. "You remember that night, right? The one you begged me not to talk about. The one with the cash, the cameras, the mistake that almost got us both arrested. Jasmine, that was years ago. You said you'd never bring it up. Yeah, well, things change. And right now I need money. Enough to keep me quiet." Jasmine stared at him. Her heart was beating so loud she could barely think. "I don't have money," she whispered. "You will. You got rich friends now. Tech money. All I need is a little favor. Just once. Or I start talking." He smiled again. "Cruel this time. You got 2 days. After that, I make sure the world hears the truth." Then he turned and walked away, whistling like it was just another Tuesday. When she closed the door, Jasmine felt her knees give out. She sank to the floor, back against the wall. The room spinning around her, all the hope she'd felt just hours ago, now twisted into a knot of fear. Her mother called out again, voice thin. "Jazz." "Who was it?" Jasmine forced herself to stand. "Just someone from the old days," she said quietly. "Nothing to worry about." But she was lying, and she knew it. Later that afternoon, she sat in a sleek conference room with 10 other women, all from different walks of life. Some were college dropouts, some single moms. One had just been released from prison, but all of them had that same spark in their eyes. That same hunger. Sundar walked in, casual, friendly, and the room lit up. "Welcome," he said. "You being here today means you believe in change, not just in the world, but in yourselves." Jasmine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her mind was stuck on Darius, on his threats, on the night she had spent years trying to forget. As the workshop began, she forced herself to focus. They were discussing digital literacy, business storytelling, and leadership principles. Jasmine took notes, asked questions, and did her best to stay present. Dot. But every time her phone buzzed, her chest tightened. Dot. What if Darius was serious? What if he told Sundar? What if he ruined everything? That night, Jasmine walked alone through the city. Her thoughts were heavy, but her steps were firm. She knew one thing: she wasn't going to run. Not again. Not this time. When she got home, she opened a new page in her notebook and wrote 5 words. You don't own my story. The next morning, she got up early and made a decision. She was going to tell Sundar everything. Dot. But when she arrived at the mentorship office, she was stopped at the door. Mr. Pichai's not here today, the receptionist said gently. He flew to California last night. He'll be gone the rest of the week. Jasmine nodded slowly, trying to stay calm. Dot. Then she checked her phone. Dot. One new message. Dot. It was from a blocked number. Time's almost up, Jazz. If I don't get what I want by tomorrow, your new life burns down with your old one. And just like that, everything she had built began to feel like it was made of glass. Asterisk the burden of silence. Jasmine sat on the worn edge of her bed that night, the city lights flickering through the thin curtains. The message from Darius kept flashing across her screen, a slow, suffocating reminder of the storm brewing around her. She had read it at least 50 times, as if some part of her was hoping the words would change, hoping it was all just a bad dream. But it was in single quotes, T-Dart. She knew Darius, knew how far he would go when he wanted something. And what scared her most wasn't the threat, it was the truth behind it. He wasn't bluffing. He knew things about her past she had buried so deep, she sometimes convinced herself they'd never come back. But now he had unearthed them, held them like weapons, and was pointing them straight at her future. Dot. She remembered the night he spoke of. It had started as a dare, a wild, reckless night fueled by anger and poverty and the feeling of being invisible. She'd followed him into a backroom card game held in the basement of an abandoned building. Darius had promised easy money, told her to flirt with the right people, told her no one would get hurt, but the night had turned chaotic. Someone pulled a knife. The cops showed up. There had been shouting, confusion, running. They escaped. Barely. But someone had recorded it on an old phone, and Darius had kept a copy ever since. He had told her he deleted it. He lied. Jasmine clenched her fists now, her breathing uneven. For years, she had worked so hard to be someone different, someone better. And now, because of one mistake, one desperate moment in a life filled with them, it was all about to come undone. But then she looked over at her mother's bedroom door. It was cracked open, just enough for Jasmine to see the soft rise and fall of her chest. She looked peaceful. Jasmine knew how much her mom worried, how much she hid behind smiles and quiet prayers. Jasmine couldn't let her down. Not again. She opened her laptop and began typing. Not an email to Sundar, not a message to the police. But a letter, a confession. To herself. I was not always the woman I am now. I've made choices that haunt me. Some were foolish. Some were born of pain. But I've never stopped trying. Even in the dark, I kept walking. This is not who I am anymore. But it's part of my story. And maybe telling the truth will finally set me free. The words poured out like rain. She didn't know if she would ever show them to anyone. But writing them gave her a little bit of strength. A little bit of air. The next morning, she walked to the mentorship center early. She wasn't sure what she was going to do yet, but she needed to be somewhere she felt safe, needed to be around women who were trying just like her. The other participants were already in the meeting room. There was laughter, nervous energy, coffee cups on the table. But Jasmine walked in with a heaviness no one else could see. She tried to smile. She tried to engage, but inside, she felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. During a break, one of the mentors came over. Her name was Sarah, mid-40s, sharp mind, warm heart. She had been through her own battles, and Jasmine had admired her from the start. You okay? Sarah asked, handing her a water bottle. You seem somewhere else today. Jasmine hesitated. She wanted to say she was fine. Wanted to fake it. But then something in Sarah's eyes made her stop. Can I ask you something? Jasmine said, Of course. What would you do if something from your past came back? Something real bad. Something that could ruin everything. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I'd face it, she said softly. Not because it wouldn't hurt, but because carrying the weight in secret hurts more. Jasmine nodded slowly, her throat tight. That evening, Jasmine found herself walking toward the diner the one where it all started. The place she had sworn. She had never returned to it was nearly closing time, and the lights inside had that dull, tired glow. She stepped inside. The bell above the door jingled. Doug looked up from behind the counter. Surprised. Double quotes. Well, he said. Look who decided to show her face. I don't want trouble, she said calmly. I just want something back. Asterisk. You got nerve, girl, he sneered. After what you pulled, I didn't pull anything, she cut in. You fired? Me for being human. That's on you. He stood up, puffed his chest like he always did when someone challenged him. What do you want? My paycheck. The last one. And the letter I left in my locker? He rolled his eyes, disappeared into the back. Jasmine stood alone at the counter. The silence buzzing as she waited. She felt it again. That weight. The fear. The voice in her head telling her to run. But she didn't move. She wouldn't run. This time Doug came back and tossed an envelope at her. There, now get out. She took it, said nothing, and walked back into the night. As she walked down the street, the city felt colder. Quieter. She opened the envelope. Her last check. Just over $300. It wouldn't fix anything. But then her phone buzzed again. A new message. Final warning. 24 hours. Don't make me do it. Jasmine stopped walking. Asterisk, her fingers hovered over the screen. This time she replied, Meet me tomorrow, noon, in public. I'll bring what you want, but after that, we're done. She hit send. She looked up. At the sky, stars barely visible behind the city haze. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew this. She would no longer live in fear. She had fought too hard, come too far, and she would face whatever came next. Asterisk. Even if it cost her everything. Asterisk. The morning came heavy, wrapped in fog and silence. The sun barely pushed through the gray as Jasmine stood at the bus stop, arms crossed, her heart pounding like a second heartbeat in her chest. She hadn't slept. She hadn't eaten. Her hands were cold, not from the weather, but from the weight of what was ahead. The letter was in her coat pocket, not the one Darius wanted, not the one he thought she would write. This one was her truth, raw, honest, unfiltered. It told everything about the night of the game, about the fear, the shame, the silence she'd carried since. But more than that, it told who she had become, who she was now. Not a girl hiding in the corners of old mistakes, but a woman ready to stand in the light of her own story. She had also brought an envelope with $300. It was all she had left after buying groceries and a second-hand laptop for the mentorship program. She knew it wouldn't satisfy Darius, but she didn't plan on giving him anything else. No more fear. No more control. Just this one moment, out in the open, with nothing left to hide. The meeting place was a public park near the edge of downtown open, visible, with people walking dogs, jogging, sipping coffee on benches. She picked it on purpose. Darius thrived. In shadows and alleys and whispered threats, but not today. Today, she wanted him out in the daylight, where he couldn't pretend to be anything but what he was. She sat on a bench near the fountain. Pigeons fluttered nearby, and the water spilled over the edge in a soft, constant rhythm. She checked the time. 11:56.12:03. She saw him. Darius walked in like he owned the world, same old leather jacket, same crooked smirk. His eyes found hers instantly, and the corners of his mouth curled into a grin. He sat beside her without a word. Far too close. Told you I'd show, he said casually, stretching out like it was a lazy Sunday. Did you bring it? Jasmine didn't respond right away. She studied his face. He hadn't changed, not really. Still cruel under the charm. Still dangerous behind the charm. Here, she said quietly. handing him the envelope. He opened it. When he saw the money, his smile faltered. This all? He asked, voice harder now. That's everything I have, she replied. And this, she pulled out the folded letter. This is what you really want. Not money, power, leverage. This tells my whole story. You can do whatever you want with it. Send it to Sundar. Post it online. Burn it. I don't care. Darius stared at the paper, then back at her. What's this? A confession? No, she said, her voice steady. It's the truth. But the part you never understood is this. I'm not afraid of it anymore. He laughed. Short, cold. You think you're brave now. Think you've risen above it all. No, Jasmine said. I know I'm still climbing. But you're not dragging me back down. Darius' expression changed. His jaw tightened. The laugh faded. You think that a fancy CEO's gonna stick around when he finds out? You think those women you're working with will still want you around? You're a fraud, Jazz, just like me. No, she said softly. That's where you're wrong. I made mistakes, but I'm not a fraud. I'm still standing, still choosing better, and that's something you've never done. Darius leaned forward, his voice low and sharp. You think you're free now? You think this little performance makes you clean? Before Jasmine could answer, another voice interrupted. I think she's more honest than most people I know. They both turned. Sundar stood a few feet away, calm, hands in his coat pockets, expression unreadable. Darius stood up quickly. His posture changed, guarded now, exposed. What is this? He growled. This is the part where you leave, Sundar said, stepping closer. And you don't come near her again. You set me up? Darius spat, looking at Jasmine. No, she said. I didn't know he was coming. She didn't, Sundar confirmed. But after what she told me last night, I decided to come back early. I wanted to see for myself. And I'm glad I did. Darius clenched his fists. You think you can scare me off? No, Sundar said simply. But the cameras in the park might. Darius looked around. Only then did he notice the city surveillance signs, the traffic camera blinking red. The jogger nearby who hadn't moved in 10 minutes and was quietly filming with his phone. You threaten her again, Sundar continued, his voice calm, but firm. And it won't be just her past we're talking about. It'll be your future. Darius looked between them, then scoffed. He dropped the envelope of money at Jasmine's feet. Not worth it, he muttered. None of this was ever worth it. He turned and walked away, shoulders tense, fading into the crowd. Jasmine stood there, her breath shaking, legs weak. Sundar stepped beside her. Are you okay? He asked gently. I think so, she said, wiping her eyes. I didn't expect you to be here. I didn't plan on it. But after reading what you sent last night, your letter, I knew I had to come. I was afraid you'd change your mind, she admitted. I didn't, he said. If anything, I believe in you more now. She looked at him, surprised. You were honest, he said. You were brave. You trusted me with your truth. Not many people would have done that. Jasmine nodded slowly. The weight she'd been carrying for years felt lighter, not gone. But lighter. She had faced her past. She had stood her ground. And she hadn't been alone. They sat in silence for a while. The city moved around them, unaware that something powerful had just happened on that bench by the fountain. Later, as the sun finally broke through the clouds, Jasmine picked up the crumpled envelope from the ground. Not for the money. But to remind herself that her story, flaws and all, was hers to tell. And it wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. Because tomorrow, the world would learn who Jasmine really was. And someone very important was about to give her the stage to do it. Asterisk the stage, and the storm. The sun rose quietly over the city the next morning, casting a golden wash across the skyline. For the first time in weeks, Jasmine felt calm. Not because everything had been solved, no, far from it, but because she had stopped hiding. Her truth had been spoken, her fears confronted, and her past stripped of its power to control her. And now something even bigger waited ahead. At 9 a.m. Jasmine stood in front of a tall mirrored building in downtown San Francisco. The glass glinted in the light, reflecting the clouds, the sky, and the world she was walking into. Her palms were damp, her chest tight, but her feet didn't falter. Sundar had invited her personally, the night before after Darius had left the park. He told her about an upcoming global summit, an event held by his company each year to highlight innovation, leadership, and change. CEOs, tech pioneers, journalists, and investors would all be there. But this year, Sundar said he wanted to change the script. This year, he told her, we start with your story. Jasmine had laughed, half nervous, half terrified. My story. I don't even know what to say. Say what's true, he said. They need to hear it. Now, as she stepped into the building's grand lobby walls of marble, floors that echoed softly beneath her heels, Jasmine tried to steady her breath. People moved past her, talking in low tones, dressed in tailored suits and polished shoes. She felt like a different species dot, but then she remembered the diner, the smell of burned coffee, the sound of forks clinking against cheap plates, the ache in her feet after 12-hour shifts, the way she'd smiled even when her world was falling apart. That woman hadn't been weak. She had been surviving. She still was. Someone from the event staff met her and guided her backstage. She was fitted with a small microphone, handed a bottle of water, and given a final rundown of the program. Her name was on the screen, now Jasmine Porter, keynote guest. Just below it, 3 words, honesty, resilience. Rise. The curtain beside. Her rippled slightly. Through it, she could hear the hum of the audience. Hundreds of people. Cameras. Lights. You'll go on right after Sundar. Someone whispered in her ear. She nodded. A few minutes later, she watched as Sundar stepped onto the stage. The crowd quieted. He stood with his usual calm, his voice smooth and steady. We spend a lot of time talking about innovation, he began, about intelligence. But real transformation comes from the human stories we don't always see. Stories of grit, of reinvention, of rising through the fire. He paused. This morning, I want you to meet someone who reminded me why we do what we do. She comes from a place not many of us have had to walk through. But her story and her strength are the kind that shape the future. He turned toward the curtain. Please welcome Jasmine Porter. The applause was immediate, warm but not overwhelming. Enough to feel real. Jasmine stepped out into the light. For a moment, the brightness blinded her. She couldn't see the faces. Just outlines, just shapes. But she felt the eyes. Hundreds of them, waiting, watching. Her throat tightened. But then her eyes found Sundar, standing just off stage, arms crossed, nodding slightly, and something inside her settled. She walked to the podium, adjusted the mic, and spoke. I used to be a waitress, a small pause. Asterisk. And before that, I was a runaway. I was scared, poor, angry. I made bad choices, ones I didn't think I'd survive. Her voice shook slightly, but she didn't stop. A few weeks ago, I was fired from my job. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I showed kindness to someone I didn't recognize. A stranger in a hoodie who needed a place to sit and a warm cup of coffee. She smiled faintly. That stranger was Sundar Pichai. The crowd murmured surprise, curiosity.